So the bills centered on our country's culture war are making progress. But what about all the other stuff? The stuff more Idahoans seem to care about, based on policy surveys and viewer messages, like property tax, grocery tax, teacher pay, budgets. There's still time for those to make progress, but today would mark the last day to get those things started. It's called the legislative transmittal deadline, a target date for lawmakers to stop introducing new ideas in committee in order to be able to finish up everything that's already out there. It's not a hard deadline, though. But based on what we've seen so far, Idaho Democratic leaders say it looks like there's a lack of focus on Idaho-centric issues from the majority party. GOP leaders say things are fine. This is fine. Here's Joe Paris.
Idaho lawmakers have a target of being done for the year in a little more than 2 weeks. Idaho Democrats are speaking out, saying late in the session, real work needs to get done.
This has been a 2-month-long Fox News fever dream.
House Minority Leader, Democrat Alana Rubel, believes Idaho lawmakers are taking cues on culture war legislation from voices outside of Idaho.
Legislation is being driven by national right-wing talking points rather than the actual needs and wants of the people in this state. Tucker Carlson's latest monologue is a far better predictor of what will appear on the agenda in this building than what actual Idahoans really want and need.
Rubel identifies legislation on library content, regulating drag shows, and bringing back the firing squad as topics that Idahoans are not calling for prioritized action on. Democrat leaders believe special interest groups and cable networks are impacting discussions on Idaho issues like property tax and infrastructure.
We really want to bring that focus back to the people of Idaho, what they need, the kids in schools, the schools their kids are going to, the money that's in their pockets, the property tax checks they have to pay, the things that will actually change their lives and not satisfy some headquarters smoky room somewhere out there in America that just wants to make a project out of seeing how many states they can pass these things in.
Democrats are calling on the heavy majority-led GOP legislature to focus on issues Idahoans want taken care of. But GOP leaders tell me they're on top of the issues Idahoans care about. House Majority Leader, Republican Megan Blanksma, responds to the comment that Republicans are obsessed with dealing with social issues first.
I don't think it's a fair comment because I don't know that we are just focused on social issues. We have some days where there are quite a few that come through and others that we don't. I think that probably what you're seeing is lack of knowledge of what's moving. If you look at the board, what we're sitting there holding are appropriations bills, which means we're trying to clear out anything that has come through committee, through a policymaking committee, before we move on to the appropriations bill. So it's just a question of ordering. It has nothing to do with a bad set of priorities at all.
Blanksma says the early action at the State House this session is simply based on what is fleshed out and ready to be discussed.
I think it's just what was available and what we could move early in the session. There's been no effort to necessarily keep things from moving. And right now we're just in the process of ordering bills so that we can move the House bills into the Senate. And I would argue always that the Democrats' priorities are not what the vast majority of Idahoans want for priorities, as we are in the supermajority as Republicans in the House.
Democrats pushed on that concept, saying important issues shouldn't be held to the end.
We have all these important issues and they're always left to the very end, and then we don't have proper time for the public to weigh in, for us to really think it through, and then we have to make a decision based on haste and pressure, and that's not good governance.
Unless you can get everything worked out at the very beginning, so we're going to run it in January and all parties are on board, then yeah, it takes time and it takes multiple drafts because you want people to concur and you want it to have a smooth path forward, and that takes a lot of negotiation.
We believe that the most important things, the things we prioritize the most, should be the first things addressed. They should not be left to get the scraps of what's left over after everything else has been dealt with.
I think they overestimate people's interest in necessarily the national talking points. The national talking points are the national talking points. What we're trying to do is address specific constituent concerns, and you'll see that in a lot of the legislation. I would be thrilled to show you my email, which comes from actual Idahoans, because they put their address on it and they tell me what their concerns are. So I think that the vast majority of issues that we're addressing are coming from concerns with constituents or concerns within state agencies on how to better address concerns that are within the greater state of Idaho.
So that transmittal deadline was technically yesterday. And again, this is more of a soft deadline. But Brian, it really is a message really to all lawmakers in the Capitol that they are trying to wind down. And I mentioned a date, March 24th. That's 2 weeks from Friday. That's kind of when Idaho lawmakers say, all right, that's when we want to have all the business done. Now, will that happen? It's truly wait and see. There's a lot of appropriation budgets and a lot of nuts and bolts that still need to get done over there. But it's wait and see. But there's a chance, I'm told, from Republican majority leadership that they think they're going to be out of there.
talked about this yesterday, of the 400 plus bills that have been introduced. I know a lot of them still in committee, won't go anywhere, but only 11 have been signed into law by Governor Little so far.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I guess, process bills that are kind of just working their way through the process. I think a lot of the time we highlight legislation and topics where there's debate back and forth. A lot of the appropriations, you know, the budgets, they take time to get through, and they're just, honestly, it doesn't make great television, but those are working their way through, and they have been since January.
All right, thanks, Joe. We'll keep track of all those. Appreciate it.